So reading from Srila Prabhupada Lamnita. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is introduction. While Abhai's involvement in writing and preaching intensified, his business and family affairs dwindled. He felt that a peculiar verse spoken by Lord Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam replied to him. Particular verse, sorry. When I feel especially merciful towards someone, I gradually take away all his material possessions. His friends and relatives then reject the poverty-stricken and most wretched fellow, leaving him only Krishna. When Abhai's business in Allahabad went deeply into debt, he tried to open a factory in Lucknow. At first it appeared profitable, but eventually it also lost money and had to be closed. While continuing to maintain his wife and children in an apartment in Calcutta, Abhai mostly lived away from them. He moved back to Allahabad, but he was putting less and less energy into selling pharmaceutical products. He was more interested in preaching. When a hospital customer in the city of Jhansi invited Abhai to lecture at the Gita Mandir, he gladly accepted. His lecture was well received by the Jhansi audience, which was made up largely of young medical students and professionals. Their appreciation, however, was mostly social and cultural. They were accustomed to hearing from many speakers whom they invited to their lecture programs, and they never intended that Abai try to establish a permanent center in Jhansi. But Abai was visionary and ambitious. Leaving his Allahabad affairs in the hands of his son, he tried to create a spiritual movement in Jhansi. At that time, Prabhupada was 56. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is chapter 1, the history of the life of Ajamil, and its text 37. Sri Shuka Uvacha Iti Ukte Yamadutais Te Iti Ukte Yamadutais Te Vasudeva Ukta Karina Vasudeva Ukta Karina Tan Prachuchu Prahashedam Tan Prachuchu Prahashedam Mega Niradaya Gira Mega Niradaya Gira Shri Shuka Uvacha Iti Yukta Yamaduteste Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Tan Prachuchu Prahasheda Megane Radayagira Shri Shuka Uvacha Iti Yukta Yamadutaiste Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Tan Prachu Prahasheda Megane Radayagira Shri Shukravacha Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Shri Shuka Uvacha Ityukte Yamadutaiste Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Tan Prachuchu Prahasyedam Megane Radayagira Ityukte Yamadutaiste Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Prachuyuchu Prahasyedam Megane Radayagira Shuka Uvacha Ityukte Yamadutaiste Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Tam Prachuja Prahasyedam Megane Radayagira. Ladies. Shri Shuka Uvacha Yamadutaiste Vasudeva Bhaktakarina Panchachu Prahasyedam Shri Shuka Uvacha Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, iti, thus, ukte, being addressed, Yamadutai, by the messengers of Yamaraj, te, they, Vasudeva Uktakarina, who are always ready to execute the orders of Lord Vasudeva, being personal associates of Lord Vishnu, who have obtained the liberation of Salokya. And unto them, Prachuchu replied, Prahasya, smiling, Idam, this, Meganeradaya, resounding like a rumbling cloud, Gira, with voices. Translation. Shukdev Goswami continued, being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraj, the servants of Vasudeva smiled and spoke the following words in voices as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. Responsively, please. Shukdev Goswami continued, being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraj, the servants of Vasudeva smiled and spoke the following words in voices as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Yama Duties were surprised to see that the Vishnu Dutas, although polite, were hindering the rule of Yamaraj. Similarly, the Vishnu Dutas were also surprised that the Yama Dutas, although claiming to be servants of Yamaraj, the supreme judge of religious principles, were unaware of the principles of religious action. Thus the Vishnu Dutas smiled, thinking, what is this nonsense they are speaking? If they are actually servants of Yamaraj, they should know that Ajamil is not a suitable candidate for them to carry off. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmalitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantitam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasali Gauda Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Shukadeva Goswami continued, being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraj, the servants of Vasudeva, smiled and spoke the following words as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. For those of us that weren't here for the full story, what's happened is a fallen Brahmin called Ajamil has died, and he's called for his son Narayan, and as he's dying, he's calling for his son Narayan. And it mentions in the previous verses that he was calling out Narayan in complete anxiety, in complete dependence. Although he didn't indicate Narayan, the Supreme Narayan, he was indicating Narayan, his little boy that had just been recently born. And so then, normally, at that time, when the living entity leaves his body, if he's been very sinful, then he's escorted by what are called Yama Duties. So Yama is death, and Duta means servant. So servants of Yamaraj, the king of death, are called Yama Dutas. And the wayward soul, kind of intuitively knowing he's in for it, is not keen on leaving his body at that moment. So he tries to stay inside. So the Yama Dutas escort him out, sometimes in a way where there's no resistance. Resistance is futile. You were mentioning the other day, weren't you, how powerful Yama is. So that would be the normal course of events. Somebody has been very sinful. They've died, and now the Yamadutas will take them to the court of Yamaraj to be judged for their nefarious activities, and then they're sent to a particular situation, a particular hellish situation for a certain period of time. And then after that, they come back into Middle Earth, the Middle Planetary System, and again resume their activities after being reformed in one way or another for a mentality or attitude that is inappropriate for the human form of life, or they don't get a human form of life and they go into another species of life, such as animal or tree or an insect or a bird. So that would be the normal course of events. However, in this case, because he called Narayan, and the Vishnu Dutas were immediately aware of that, and they were able to appear. And so now the Vishnu Dutas, who are servants of Vishnu from Vaikuntha. Now you don't normally see the Vishnu Dutas at the time of death unless you've been a very good boy, very pure. So the Yama Dutas are wondering, it seems the Yama Dutas have never seen Vishnu Dutas before. At least these particular ones anyway. I don't know if they've passed the word around now. Maybe had a temple council meeting and told all the Yama Dutas, don't make the same mistake again. So perhaps for these Yama Dutas, it seems it's the first time they've ever seen a Vishnu Duta, because normally they get sent along to Yamaraj is one of the living entities in the universe who's aware of everything. He's Sarva Abhigya. Abhigya refers to one who's all cognizant of what's going on in the universe. So Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, of course, Lord Vishnu, and also Yamaraj is aware. So he was aware, sent the Yamadutas. So then the Vishnu Dutas are wondering why is Yamaraj sent them? Surely he's aware of religious principles, and they've been calling out Narayan. But for the Yamadutas, this is the first time. Normally, Yamaraj doesn't make a mistake. They get sent. They can see the living entity's subtle body, and the subtle body has all the memories of all the things that you've done in your life. So it's very obvious to them. They can see everything that's going on, and they can see what you've done. And then they take living entity who's sometimes struggling, usually is struggling. And then he gets his, whatever he's due. He gets his good karma and also his bad karma. Sometimes when the living entity goes into the court of Yamaraj, Yamaraj will say, well, you've got this much good karma, you've got this much bad karma. What do you want to do first? You want to suffer the bad karma first, or you want to enjoy the good karma first? There's one story like that where a king was taken, and the king said, well, I'll go for I'll get the bad karma over with now, and then I can just go and have a good time, just enjoy myself. You know that story, huh? And then something else happened. Anyway, so that would be the normal course of events. And but in this case, the Vishnu Dutas are not backing down, and they're not going to allow the Yamadutas. And the Yamadutas are starting to realize now. It's referred to the sound of their voices was as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds. So the Yamadutas are realizing that these Vishnu Dutas are more powerful than we are, and that we're not going to be able to we're going to have to go back to Yamaraj and get an explanation, because we just don't know. This has never happened before. Why is it happening like this? So this is a wonderful story in the Bhagavatam, a true story, illustrating the power of the holy name, how powerful chanting the names of, even because Ajamil wasn't chanting Narayan in a devotional way to attain pure devotional service, which is what we're trying to do, we're aspiring to do. But he was chanting it in ignorance of that fact, and still there was so much potency there in the holy name. So that's very encouraging for us chanters of the holy name. Sometimes we become a little discouraged. The stories in the the reason why these stories are here in the Bhagavatam is to encourage us, which would suggest that at times it is discouraging. Trying to practice spiritual life in the material ocean, material existence, it can be discouraging. So stories like this help to encourage us so that we can become inspired and enthusiastic to continue on in the face of mitigating factors, shall we say, that are concomitantly there with the material energy. That's why the material energy is like that, as an incentive to get out. If the material energy, I remember Shiva Ramanuja was telling us one time, there was one universe that Hiranyakashipu was in, And he was so powerful that he made all the demigods back off, and people were just enjoying themselves, and there was no reaction. They were just like, it was spring all year round, and everyone was doing whatever they wanted, and everything was great. It was all geared towards just sense gratification. So if it was like that in the material world, then who would want to leave? Would you want to leave? No, you want to just settle down here, eh? Have a good time. I mean, even people are trying to settle down, and it's terrible, and they're still trying to hang on like anything, you know, never mind if it was actually quite good. So it's set up in that way so that the living entity is uncomfortable, and everything is so temporary that even if you do get what you want, it's crumbling before your eyes. The body is sagging, and everything is starting to hang off and wrinkle and go grey, and so the whole attempt is futile, actually, a futile attempt. Still, the living entity, the jiva, is referred to as being like a hero, because despite all these adversities, no, come on, we can do this, we can win the lottery, and things are going to be, I'll have a facelift, you can lose 3 stone, we'll get the latest car, things can still be okay, don't hang on in there, it's going to get good pretty soon, don't worry, you know. So that's like a real hero, you know, rather than just, okay, look, this is a waste of time. There must be something better than this. And at that point, that's when the living entity in distress, one of the 4 pious living entities, one's in distress, searcher of opulence, inquisitive, and the inquirer about the absolute truth. They're the 4 types of pious, but the majority are in distress. So Ajamil is like that. He's in distress. He's not even calling out for Narayan. He's just calling out for his son, who happens to be called Narayan. But he really does decide to start changing his act after he's seen the Yama Duties and he's seen the Vishnu Duties. Then the latter part of the story, Ajamil becomes a pure devotee, and at the time of his actual death, I don't know how much longer he lived. Couldn't have been that much longer because he was 88, right? So however much longer he lived, another few years, he practiced very, very intense devotional service, very pure devotional service. And at the time of death, he went back to Vaikuntha. So a successful story, a story with a happy ending. All the stories in the Bhagavatam have a happy ending. You know, this once upon a time, and then they all lived happily ever after. And Srila Prabhupada even uses it in one of the stories of the Krishna book. It was once upon a time, you know. So they're the original stories. Any questions or comments?
First, it's just very interesting to see the exchange between Vishnu Dutas and Yama Dutas before, and they generally not abstracted with anyone knows what they would like to do. Very powerful, and you can see the way they were get the salt out. Sometimes it's a bit and then Vishnu Dutas is like a very far superior than Yama Dutas, but they also like a king, and you know the exchange between them was very, very polite. Although you know both sides, they had their right to do what they were doing. The exchange was like a very respectful. And he mentions there that Vishnu Dutas were very polite, although they were superior, and Yama Dutas were like a very intense, you know, kind of horrible. The way how sometimes they deal with the salt, and they're also like a very nice exchange and appreciation. So just what it's nice to kind of learn from these exchanges.
Yeah, we can learn
plantation situation.
We can learn nonviolent communication from the Vishnu Dutas.
Although in their mind they were thinking about
Yeah, which was probably also unnerving for the Yama Dutas, because they realized that these personalities are obviously very, very powerful, and you can either do what we say nicely, or we will do something about it. It's up to you. But they were totally unfazed. And whereas the Yama Dutas have never seen Vishnu Dutas before, the Vishnu Dutas have seen everything. So and they were in the right also. If you're having a fight with someone and you're in the right, then you're stronger, according to the law of Dharma. If you're fighting for the right reasons, and because Dharma is on your side, then you're stronger anyway.
Just this word, and like the servants of Vasudev smile. So, like I heard from Srila Radha Govind Maharaj's Katha as well on Ajamil, very nice. And this smiling shows like that their personality as well. Vishnu Dutas smiling. And also Ajamil, he's in such a precarious situation right at the moment of death. And this is the first time now that Vishnu Dutas will start speaking from here on or like that, and seeing them smile brings a hope as well for Ajamil. Okay, someone is there and here they are smiling, because he's like he has seen the faces of Yam Dutas, and now he's seen the faces of Vishnu Dutas as well, and now he's seeing them smiling, brings such a hope for him. And also for us also, like this lesson that doesn't matter whatever tough situation is, and nothing can be as tough and this than right in the lap of that sitting here. But Vishnu Dutas coming and smiling is very hopeful. Like in Bhagavad Gita as well, Arjuna was in a very tough situation. But the Krishna, first thing he did is, without even speaking, the first thing is he smiled. And that gave the message that did not worry Arjuna, and also the other side as well. There's nothing to worry.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm just trying to remember the verse I was reading this morning from Krishna trying to meet about
Smile. Shishi Konitai Maya Pashashi Ki Jai. Shitashinath Maharaj Ki Jai. Does anyone know this verse? Maduram Mudaram Vapo Ajya Vibo. Maduram Maduram Vadanam Maduram. You know that one? By both Mangala Thakur. Madhu Gandhi Mrdu Smitam Etad Aho Maduram 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 Maduram. So Smitam is perhaps here is smiling, and also Smitam is smiling. And it says, oh my Lord, the transcendental body of Krishna is very sweet, and his face is even sweeter than his body, but his soft smile, which has the fragrance of honey, is sweeter still. Which is nice, isn't it? Because we're not used to being in a realm where senses are interchangeable. So you never hear of anyone saying, oh, he was smiling and it was giving off a fragrance like honey, you know. Mm-hmm. But in the spiritual world, everything is interchangeable. So you can smell the person's smile, and you can see the person's voice, and you can hear the person's form, because the senses are not restricted like they are here in the material world, you know. So you can have a smile that has a fragrance which is sweeter than honey. And it's only possible to be able to smile like that if you have that purity and that freedom from any anxiety, and you're completely immersed in pure love. And that type of smile is very captivating. And it's interesting because the material energy, which is very attractive, is considered Krishna's smile. So because we are attracted to Krishna's smile, and we don't know how to look toward Krishna for the smile, then we look toward the material energy for Krishna's smile. And that's why we find the material energy attractive. Interesting. Smile is very attractive. And it's funny as well there, it does explain in the Nectar of Devotion that there's different stages of smiling. There's one stage where you smile and it just comes up a little bit, and then you smile a bit more and then dimples appear, and then you smile a bit more and the teeth appear, and then you smile and your shoulders start, because you start laughing. It's like a full-on, real. And it's funny, isn't it? In the material world, we relate to that. But if we were all just by chance, and we just happened to have a blob of flesh on our head with a hole in it, because that's where we put the chapatis, and there was no other reason, then why would the hole that tends up at the corners indicate smile. Where does that come from? You know? Why is that? If it's all by chance. Oh, look at that blob over there with a hole on the blob on top of it. It's got a crack in its face and it's going up at the sides. Must be really happy. It's because it's a reflection of what's going on in the spiritual world, and you know, people. I was talking to a man in Aberdeen. I pray for him every day, Ronnie, and he's got cancer, and he was saying, "Can you please just let me live a little bit longer, because I just want to see my grandchildren grow up." So his only thing in life is just to see these little kids smile, you know. That's what's keeping him going. Otherwise, there's no reason. And he's got such a strong determination to continue on living, just to experience that affectionate exchange with his loved ones. So it's very, very powerful, actually. The smile is very powerful. The smile is also something to be wary of if the material energy is smiling at you. And the eyebrows as well. The eyebrows are compared to bows. And when Maya fires her bow, she goes like that. And then she fires the glance of Cupid into your heart, you know, and you become besotted. So,
speaking about smile, is Kapila there? Is he teaching? I remember is he teaching this, you know, meditation of meditating on Vishnu in the heart, and this beautiful description is given of Vishnu, and then kind of going from the bottom and then rising to the smile, and the effect that it has on meditating on that smile is described, which in Sanskrit is called shoka ashru. Ashru means tears, and shoka means shock or lamentation. So describe that the smile, it dries out the ocean of tears of a devotee, you know, going through lamentation, through struggle, through so much, and having that smiling face, you know, and it happens as well, like looking at the deities after some sacrifice that you do for the smile of spiritual master, it dries out, you know, the ocean of tears.
Yeah, I thought
it was the deity in Hungary, because I came back and I was looking at Lord Nityananda. I was saying to the, is that the same Lord Nityananda? I said, it's the same one. He looks really different, you know? Really happy, really smiling, like anything. I've never noticed it before. It's a whole science as well. When you read an Nectar of Devotion, you see that living exchange is a whole science, and they know very little about the science of love in Western society. They don't even know it is love. You know? It is a science. They just think it's like some chemical thing going off, and they don't really know. They don't know what love is, and they don't really know how to express love. What they express is lust and intense desire and obsessiveness and possessiveness and controllership, which actually has nothing to do with love. And who's being educated? I mean, do we have that in school? We have a class, and we're going to learn today how to express love, how to receive love, how to interact in a loving way. And it's such an important. If everybody was going around interacting with each other in a loving way, then there would be a lot less problems in the world, you know. How we interact with the environment around us, with the animals, with the trees, with the rivers. We could be doing it all with love if we wanted to. So it's a shame, because then the real human potential of the human heart is not being fulfilled. And if you don't fulfill your potential, then you can never be happy. If you remain unfulfilled, it's like being a really powerful person and not realizing how strong you are. Then you're not expressing your full potential. The Nectar of Devotion, it explains all these, and the Nectar of Instruction as well, by giving and receiving gifts, revealing your mind, confidentially, hearing confidential subject matters. Person's revealing his mind to you, you're revealing your mind to him, and offering food which has been cooked with loving devotion, and receiving food which has been cooked with loving devotion. These are the real exchanges of love that are going on. It has nothing to do with what is considered the act of love, which is far from actually love. It's more an act of dominance, of controllership that's going on, and it's confused as love. So how can we have a happy society when the people are not educated how to express real love and how to recognize real love? One man went to his counselor and he said, I want to divorce my wife. And the counselor says, why? He says, because I don't love her. And the counselor said, well, why don't you love her? Why don't you just love her then? Just love your wife. And he said to the counselor, he got a bit annoyed actually. He says, I've just told you that's the problem, I don't love my wife. The counselor says, well, why don't you love your wife? He said, it's not an adjective. Love is a verb, it's a doing word. You can love your wife by serving your wife, by listening to your wife, by showing your wife respect, by protecting her. In this way, you will cultivate love. They say in the West, the man marries the woman he loves, and in the East, a man loves the woman he marries. And my wife, actually, the first time her mother and father saw each other was on the day of the wedding. And they've been happily married. And you have these romantic ones where, their eyes meet across the clouded, smoky nightclub. and they lock in a fixed trance. And that's when they both realize that this is the one for me. And then 6 months later, I mean, we saw, when we were on the marathon, we went up to, we were driving past some flats in Dundee, and there must have been a domestic dispute, because it was a flat, it was about 4 stories up, and it had a veranda, and then on the veranda were various bits of furniture, and the window that should have been opened to allow the furniture out had remained closed, and the furniture had been escorted out of the window during the window being closed, indicating a very intense, volatile situation preceding the event. So we thought, well, there must have been a domestic dispute. They must have been on lockdown for too long, They say, when you're on lockdown too long, when you turn to your partner and say, could you blink a little bit more quietly, please? And it's time for a walk in the park. So, if people were educated better how to receive and express love, then we could navigate through all these different problems, If it's just a superficial, because of the way the person looks. I mean, how a person looks is a very, very small part of the whole equation, isn't it? I mean, they may look okay, but they may smell terrible. They may be really lazy, they may be really messy. Then you find all these things out once you get married. You think, oh, she doesn't smell like she looks. She doesn't sound like she looks. She doesn't behave like she looks. Or he doesn't. Also, he lets the side down badly as well. They say that with a love affair, they can both put on a good act for about 18 months. So for 18 months, they can really make out they're a lot nicer than they are. Then after 18 months, both of them are getting a bit fed up, and they're starting to behave how they really are, By which time there could be 1 or 2 kids in the equation, and the whole situation that they've become enmeshed in. So it would be really, really good to be able to do that. The power of the smile and the power of the living exchange would be really, really good to do, wouldn't it?
Meet the course.
Yeah. Smiling course. When you smile, the whole world smiles with you. And also, it takes less muscles to smile than it does to frown. So you can save yourself a lot of energy by just being happy. And that's very, they say the first and foremost, if you want to become proactive in your life, then the very first thing you do is you become happy. And you may have a barrage of reasons why you can't be happy. So many good reasons, so many justifiable reasons why you can't be happy. You've got a hole in your welly, or the weeds are getting too big, or you didn't get enough prashadam on your plate that morning. Therefore, I have a really good reason for being unhappy. So proactively happy means that regardless of the environment and circumstances around you, you've already made your mind up you're going to be happy anyway. But it takes strength of character to be able to do that. And rendering Krishna wants loving service rendered to him by devotees that are joyful. Shasukam katam avyaya. This knowledge is the king of education. It is the perfection of religion because it gives one direct experience of the self by realization. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. So if it's not being joyfully performed, then it's not devotional service. So whatever it is, yesterday I was watching Jayananda and he was joyfully taking the wallpaper off the ceiling in number 18. And so if you're doing any activity in a joyful way, you're faster at doing it. It's done to a much higher standard. If you're kind of dragging your heels and wishing you were somewhere else doing something else, then it's not being joyfully performed. So that's an important part. Devotional service is only devotional service when it's done to please Krishna. If it's not being done with the intention to please, then you won't be pleased. And Krishna won't be pleased. Well, automatically, if Krishna is not pleased, then you won't be pleased. But if you're doing it to please Krishna, Krishna is not so much concerned with the result as the intention. In fact, he's so, we see from Ajamil, even Ajamil didn't have the intention to please. He was just taking shelter of trying to take shelter of his son, which is not going to do very much. His son's not going to be able to do very much to protect him from the Yama Duties. There's a nice song like that, Edana Yobana Putra Parijana. What protection can you find in all your wealth and relatives at the time of death? You can gather them all around, all your money, all your best friends, all your sons and brothers and everybody. And what can they really do to help you at that time? Putra, all your offspring. What can you do? Putra, Jani, Jana. So they can't really give the shelter and the protection that we're looking for. Any other questions or comments? Shukadeva Goswami, being thus addressed by the messengers of Yamaraj, the servants of Vasudeva, smiled and spoke the following words in voices as deep as the sound of rumbling clouds.
I'm wondering what happens to somebody who is there somebody to come collect them to
If they die.
Yeah, when they die, and if their karma dictates they're going to the heavenly planets, who comes to take care of that?
Well, it's a different situation in the heavenly planets because you don't grow old. And when you do die, the only way you know that you're dying is that your garland starts to fade. And then you know you haven't got long. And if you're a female, in the last year of your life, that's when you get pregnant. And then the kid is born, fully grown. So it's a bit different the way things happen there. And when you fall from the heavenly planets, you fall as a tear. Because Chanakya Pandit said the worst type of unhappiness, sadness, is falling from the heavenly planets. And then that tear has the jiva inside it, and the tear comes down in the rain. Then it goes into the earth, and it comes up in the grain. And then the grain is eaten, it goes into the semen, and it's discharged into the womb. So that's what happens in the heavenly planets. A bit different than if you're in middle life, you're accruing karma. In the heavenly planets, you're only burning up your karma. You're not accruing any karma. It's only here that you do that. That's when you see the Yama Duties. If you're in the hellish planets, you burn up your karma and then you come.
And just about the point. So I was thinking, we should do things that make us joyful, or should we try to be joyful in everything that we're doing? That's a very good thing to think about.
Very good question. No.
Can you give me an example?
Well, when sometimes so I find it's very difficult to be joyful, but is it still considered devotional service? Whereas if I do something that I really like and I'm really joyful in doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So we're all a work in progress. And there's an intermediate stages as well where you're transitioning. So when I first joined, I'd been an artist from when I was a very early age. I'd always drawn and painted, every single day. Because somebody told me if you don't do it every day, then you'll start to lose the talent. So I always did it every day. And then when I joined, I had this idea that joining the Hare Krishnas, I don't know why I had this idea, but I had this vivid idea that they would give me a velvet cushion, a tub of yogurt, an easel to paint from, so I could because I was going to tell them, look, I'm an artist, so find something for me to do with painting, and then I would have like some nice music playing, and maybe a stick of incense, and that would be me for the next 50 years. And funnily enough, I didn't get the cushion, but they gave me a nice chair. I was painting alongside Kishore's wife, Karma, what's her name? Shri Karma. And she was painting Lord Chaitanya, and I was doing that one of Krishna that's now in the hall, in the manna, eating from the butter. And I thought, well, this is really, really good, But then what I noticed was I was starting to revert back into the way I was feeling and thinking when I'd been a student and I'd been doing painting. And I started to feel like I was just a college, but college had been transferred now to Worcester Chaitanya College, And I could feel myself reverting back. And then luckily enough, the announcement came that we have a little bit of an emergency. And would you mind just going out to do some fundraising with the devotees on the street, selling books? And I thought, okay, well, I guess I could do that for a couple of weeks, And then 40 years later, and now I really like it, I have my moments actually where I'm feeling very joyful when I'm doing it. I have some nice exchanges, but it didn't come easy, I had to work on that. So you could envision yourself, well, what service would I like to do for Krishna? And also, can I also just do what is the needful for Krishna? Because although initially it may not be very pleasing to you, it becomes pleasing to you as you realize that this is pleasing to Krishna. And initially it can be very pleasing to you, and then if it's displeasing to Krishna, then it starts to become displeasing to you. So what's nectar in the beginning becomes like poison, and what's poison in the beginning starts to become like nectar. So that's transitioning from the mode of ignorance into the mode of goodness. And when you're in the mode of goodness, the tastes of things change. As you become purified as well, things that you would have been joyful about, you're no longer so enlivened by, So that's what's happening as you're transitioning, going from one to the other. And then if you associate with devotees that are really joyful in their service, they're really, really feeling privileged and fortunate to be doing their service, then that starts to rub off on you. You start becoming excited as well. I remember we had to clean the floor in the kitchen in Chaitanya College, and I was just a young bhakta. I'd been a bhakta for about 2 weeks, and Shyamasundar was with me, the cow Shyamasundar, who was like Superman to me. He'd been a devotee for 2 years, so he was like a demigod as far as I was concerned. And we were looking out, we had the bucket and a cloth each, and we were looking out across the kitchen floor, and it was like looking over the you know, the Grand Prairie, or it was like a vast expanse, you know, and it was just strewn with grease and dried chilies and bits of pasta and everything. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to take ages, you know. And so I was clutching my cloth a little hesitantly to dive into the Grand Canyon. And there was Shyamasundar, did this like kind of almost like a dive, you know, just slid along the floor on his belly. He just completely was just so into it, you know. I was thinking, oh, he's really into this. So okay, I'll try that as well. And I was on my belly, and I was thinking, this is pretty good actually. When you really get into it, it's actually I'm actually quite liking it. I felt like I was swimming across the ocean of material existence. And so I was thinking, it's probably like that with a lot of things in devotional service. If you just embrace it and give it everything you've got, it becomes relishable. But when you hold back, you're not really into it, and you're reluctant, and you're doing it at the same time, then it can be quite, you know, you're just prolonging the agony, really. Jai, Iskon Guru in the key, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Bol. All of you ki, Jai.